Welcome to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. Matt has a surprise for us, and I can't wait to see what is underway here. Oh my gosh. Oh my. Monstrous Matt McClellan is making an appearance in the Less is More Sports podcast.
This is my mascot look, baby. I am excited for today's show. Eat your heart out, Western Kentucky. I am the mascot now.
He is the mascot now. And we have a jam-packed episode to talk about today because it is my favorite time of year. The weather is cooling down, eggnog is back in the shelves, but most importantly, college basketball is right around the corner, and it is the best time in sports. I don't care. It's here. It's college basketball, and me and Matt are going in, and to be prepared to the listeners, this is going to be a very long podcast, but it is going to be a very good one. So please stay tuned and hear what me and Matt have to say. So Matt, without further ado, are you ready to get started?
Yes. Let's get started.
I thought you were going to do the whole podcast with that on.
Are you kidding? That thing will smell like the entire varsity team was playing in it if I wore that for the next hour.
Fair enough. All right. So we're going to kick things off with a conference that you know all too well, the Big Ten, who, in my opinion, is the most competitive conference in college basketball. I was listening to the Hummel and Goodman podcast the other day, and they said that they could see up to 7 teams with a legitimate chance to win the Big Ten Conference. Matt, do you think that's a fair statement?
I'm surprised it stopped at 7. My God. To give you an idea of how good the Big Ten is, Indiana, with a new coach and all those transfers, came out in the Ken Palm rankings. They were ranked 30th or something like that. That's pretty good overall, right? 30 out of like 300 odd teams. That's really damn good, right?
Yeah.
That's only good for 8th overall in the Big Ten. 8th. You're the 30th best team in the country, and you're the 8th best team in your conference, according to preseason rankings. That's how damn good the Big Ten is. And it's usually like this in and out every year. And I don't know how many of those guys have a shot to win the conference, but they got a lot of decent guys who are going to make a tournament run, I bet. Because that's the thing I look at when I see the Big Ten with these new transfer rules, with these new extra years of eligibility, is there are a lot of guys in the Big Ten, a lot of teams who have one guy who can just change the fortune of a game because that's just how good they are. There are a few teams that are very complete, but what I look at are the individual guys out there who are going to be hustling day in and day out because there are a lot of them. There are some dogs in that conference. I think we should rename the Big Ten Conference the Dog Conference because if you're not a dog, you're getting sent to the pound.
I think that's a very appropriate thing to call the Big Ten because even though to some basketball fans, they might find it not a very exciting style of play, but it is blue collar and it is physical and it is not one for the weak. So I think the Dog Conference is what we are going to refer to the Big Ten basketball conference on this show from here on out. So props to the analogy. But I'm looking at the Big Ten this year, Matt, and not only do they have at least, at minimum, 7 teams that have a legitimate chance to win this, but one thing that stood out to me is that they are loaded with big man talent across that town. I mean, I'm looking at the Trevion Williams of the world or the Zach Eady's, the Trace Jackson Davises. I mean, and we can go on and on. So, I mean, and Hunter Dickinson at Michigan. I mean, this conference not only has talent at the guards, but they got talent across the bigs. And that's going to be, oh man, I feel for any guard that's going to try and take it in the lane in that conference this year. That's going to be, these guards that are going to try and take it through the lane are going to be black and blue by the end of the season.
And Les, the amazing thing is you didn't even hit on one of the guys who I'm hearing about all the time, and that's Kofi Cockburn out in Illinois. We didn't even talk about him, and he is a difference maker down on the post. We're not even talking about like Bo Bowie at Northwestern, who's back for like his 28th year in the league, who's a very good stretch guy who's going to make life hell for you as a guard or a big man because that's just what he does. The Big Ten, or Jordan Bohannon at Iowa, one of the last remnants of like that great team from last year with Luka Garza, a guy who can really take a game in his hands, get a bunch of rebounds, and just make your team look silly. The Big Ten, if you give me a team outside of like the bottom dwellers, of course, I can give you a guy who's going to change the fortune of a game just by being on the court. That's the amazing thing about that conference is how tough it is year in and year out. And now even with Steve Peichel, we've got Rutgers coming back. They lost a lot of guys to transfer, but they've still got a good coach and they still got stuff in the tank. Minnesota, I'm expecting them to be a little bit better this year. Not great. I think Indiana is on the come up because of shocking reasons, because, for some reason Mike Woodson decided he wanted to play with expectations his first year. And I mean, it's just going to be an absolute bloodbath between, and there are some good freshmen coming into this conference too, but we'll get to them later. But yeah, the Big Ten, if you give me a team, I can tell you a guy who is going to make your jaw drop to the floor at least once a game, because that's just how good this conference is, how loaded this conference is, and how deep the talent goes. That even like a team like Northwestern has a guy who's going to blow your mind. I've seen Bo Buie play many times, and he is just amazing. So props to the Big Ten. Like we said, it's a freaking bloodbath every year, and this year's no different.
With a conference rather, that has so many teams that have a legitimate chance to win it, it almost seems impossible to accurately pick the preseason winner, but we're going to do it anyway. So Matt, if you had to choose right now, preseason, who is your choice to come out of the Big Ten?
We said all that, but it's no question for me who the best team in the Big Ten and maybe even the country is, and that's Purdue. And it pains me as a guy who loves IU to say that, but I look at Purdue's roster. They've got Trevion Williams. He's one of the best big men in the country. He hustles, he gets rebounds, he scores, he assists. They have Zach Edey, who came out of nowhere. This like 2-star prospect who's 7'4", and now he's even better looking than Isaac Haas was, and Isaac Haas was pretty darn good. Jaden Ivey is back. Eric Hunter is back. They've got shooting. They've got Sasha Stefanovic, who came out of the woodwork last year to just shoot an amazing percentage. And you know what the scary part is? They reloaded during the recruiting cycle. They've got 2 guys coming in from in-state who are just absolutely 2 of the best players I've ever seen play in high school. And that's Caleb First and Trey Kaufman out of Silver Creek. Caleb First went to Fort Wayne Blackhawk. Those are 2 big men with some great games, some great skills, some great athleticism. And Matt Painter, he surpassed expectations last year. That team is back. That team is tough. That team has depth. I love Purdue. I know people are going to be very high on Michigan, and I understand that. Michigan's going to be a very good team too. But I love the way Purdue plays. I love their style. I think the way they are going to just grind your bones to a dust in the Big Ten schedule is going to be amazing. I think Purdue is a genuine national title contender. And that pains me so much as an IU guy to say that. But this team is deep. This team is athletic. And this team returned all the pieces they need to go all the way to the Final Four.
I'm going to savor this moment because I think this may be the lone time on this podcast that you and I agree on this episode, and that I am absolutely convinced on Purdue. Because first and foremost, like you alluded to, they have the size. Trevion Williams, Zach Edey, they have everyone back. The chemistry's there. They're athletic. They're deep. But the difference maker for me, and this is and we may disagree on this one, but my Big Ten player of the year is Jaden Ivey. I watched him play last year, and then I watched him throughout the summer playing in the FIBA U19s, and he looked like the best player on the court in most games. He is a pro. His draft stock is going to skyrocket throughout the year, and I predict him to win the Big Ten Player of the Year. Look, again, like you alluded to, Michigan's going to be a good team. They have, their star big Hunter Dickinson back. They landed a star transfer in Devontae Jones, and Caleb Houston, their top recruit, can play. But watching Michigan a lot last year, they were one of those teams. They kept winning, but even as a basketball mind like myself, I really didn't know what they did well. They did a lot of things good, but nothing really great. And I see a lot of the same in that this year. And for me, you had to be able to take that next step, to be able to be like my preseason, this is the pick that I have to roll with. I need to at least know what you're great at, what you excel at. And Michigan, I don't know. And I don't know, I'm not saying anything wrong with them, not saying they're not a good team, but there's nothing that they do that stands out to me. Yeah, Hunter Dickinson's good, but he's not the most dominant big I've ever seen. They're decently shooting. I mean, they're a good defensive team, not a great defensive team. They're not the best rebounding team I've seen. So I don't know what they excel at. So teams like that, I'm convinced they're going to be good, but I'm not convinced they can be great. I know another team that a lot of people are high out in the Big Ten is Illinois, and I am not at all, because I was a big advocate for Ayo Dosunmu. last year at the point guard position. I thought he was a fantastic player. I thought he should have went higher in the draft than he did, but I'm not the one drafting player, so I understand that. Right. And also an underrated loss was the loss of Adam Miller, who transferred to LSU. Look, that guy is a silky smooth shooter who also had a very good performance in the FIBA under-19s this past summer. I think that one point guard Cerbello, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I think it's Andre Cerbello. I think he could be a really good player. And of course they got Kofi Cockburn coming back, who I watched play in high school, and that guy is just a load. But I guess, again, Illinois, I think the loss of Dosunmu and Miller are going to be too much for overcome for me to be overly excited about. Now, Matt, I'm going to flash back to one of your Indiana guys, Archie Miller, and he made a very interesting prediction that Ohio State is going to win the Big Ten. And I'm going to be honest, they're a good team. I think they could run a very scary small ball lineup. EJ Liddell at the center position could cause a lot of mismatch problems, but I don't know. I'm with you. I like the Boilermakers, and my girlfriend's gonna love me even more just for hearing this on this podcast.
Well, I will say one thing about Illinois before we go any further, and that's there is one guy on Illinois coming in who I am very interested to see play, and that's another Indiana kid. You know, I live in Indiana. I have to go to the high school games, even though I didn't go to an Indiana high school. I went to a private high school in Kentucky, but I have no life, and I like basketball. And I can't afford to go to Pacer games. Sorry. But they got a guy named Luke Good at Illinois, if he can turn into the kind of shooter I saw in high school, that could be a huge difference maker. That guy can replace Adam Miller when it comes to that. So his development is going to be key to how far the Illini go, because like you said, they've got Cabello, they've got Tim Frazier still coming back, one of those great players, and they've got Cockburn down low. And that's a pretty good foursome if you can get Luke Good to be the kind of shooter I saw in high school, because, man, he could shoot the lights out. And then you move over, and I think you hit Ohio State on the head perfectly. They are going to be a very good team. Chris Holtmann has an amazing squad this year. I just don't like their size or their depth, but I think EJ Liddell, if I had to pick a player of the year candidate that wasn't Trevion Williams, I would go with him. I just he's got like this Draymond Green, but better quality to him. He's got so much hustle. He's got so much just defensive presence for a guy who's undersized at his position. And in the Big Ten is the one conference left in America where you have to have like this hulking 7-foot guy. That's the one thing that like every Big Ten school still has that a lot of conferences don't, is you have to have the Hulk in the middle or you're going to struggle. And EJ Liddell plays like a Hulk. He's just the size of Ant-Man. And that could be an issue at times when you're going up against teams like that. But I love EJ Liddell. I really think he should have been a preseason All-American. That came out today. I didn't see him on there. I might have missed him. But he's a guy who I think could be Big Ten Player of the Year just because of his motor and the way he plays. But I still think the Boilermakers are the most complete team right now. Injuries could prevent that. God, I hope not. But I just love how they have a solution for like every problem with a team that we mentioned prior to them. So I still think Purdue's a solid choice.
You know, leave it to this podcast to throw in the Marvel reference with talking about Big Ten basketball. But being an Indiana guy, Matt, you're a big Hoosiers fan. So give us some realistic expectations on what you expect to see from the Hoosiers this season.
I'm not going to say too much now because I'm going to get to it later. But when they hired Mike Woodson, I'm not going to lie, I was disappointed. I'm not going to lie. I knew they weren't getting Brad Stevens. I knew that was just stupidity in the highest degree. He's not leaving Boston. Even in the middle of a power change, he's not leaving Boston. But the reason why I was afraid of Mike Woodson was I was afraid that the old heads had won. The old Bobby Knight, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, hide the evidence of incriminating action. I thought those types had won, and Trace Jackson Davis was going to be gone. Race Thompson was going to be gone. They were all in the transfer portal, and they were over because they didn't want to play for a guy who's most famous for being a GIF on NBA like Twitter feeds. And then the moves started happening, and Trace Jackson Davis is staying. He goes out and he gets Tamar Bates, who's a highly ranked prospect. It's one of his first big moves. That really caused my jaw to drop. He goes out and he gets Miller Kopp. He gets Michael Durr from South Florida. I'm like, Mike Woodson is making moves. And then the Indiana schedule comes out. And it's like the one thing about the Archie Miller era that always bothered me was, they would get like the Gavitt game. They would get the ACC Big Ten Challenge. But in between that, Indiana would just play like the number 358 team in college basketball and win by 20 points. And you'd be like, whatever. But this year, while they're not playing like Purdue every night, they're playing at least teams you've heard of. They're going to get tested, and that's what I want. I want that. But what's really surprises me is that Mike Woodson is playing with expectations in his first year, and it's hard to taper those because this feels like what was accumulation last year for Archie Miller when he got all that talent together. He got all those in-state kids like Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal. This feels like what Mike Woodson is doing in year one, what Archie Miller did in like year 5 to me, when it comes to like assembling his Avengers. And it's curious to see what he's going to do because I'm trying to taper my expectations, but there's a lot to be happy about. And I'll get into more of that a little bit later, but that was my initial reaction. I went from being like afraid that everyone was gone and we were going to be stuck with like boring basketball and a lot of transfers to, do I have expectations in year one for a coach? So that's my initial take on Indiana, and I'll get more into them later, but it's just shocking to me that in year one, it feels like Mike Woodson has done more than Archie Miller did in 5 years. And that's not to insult Archie Miller. His style just did not mesh with what Indiana was doing, I suppose, or his players wanted. But it's just mind-boggling that, like, I went from hating the idea of having Mike Woodson coach 3 months ago to now I'm like, okay, let's see how we do against Florida State. I'm very excited for this because I didn't expect to be that way. I thought this was going to be the cupboard is bare, but the cupboard is full and the cup runneth over. And I got to see what Mike Woodson does with it, if he spills it or if he drinks it.
I think it's a very fair analogy. And of course, anytime you have this new trend that we're getting in college basketball, where we get an NBA guy come back to the college level, you don't know what to expect, but the likes of like Penny Hardaway and Juwan Howard have really shed the light in that direction in a positive way, to where it's going to lead to some excitement, like with Mike Woodson coming to Indiana. And of course, as all Indiana fans know, I mean, with the last several seasons or last really decade, rather, you don't really know what to expect in the candy stripes anymore. And I think the Indiana fans, they're getting restless. They want to get back to where they were when they were a dominant team in college basketball. And they are at the point that where they have been mediocre for too long and they want to get back to competing. So Mike Woodson has a lot on his shoulders right now. But as you alluded to, he's assembling his Avengers. So let's see what's going on. But transitioning through the rest of the Big Ten, obviously, you can never count out Michigan State, any team coached by Tom Izzo for that matter, because even if they lose a lot of games at the early on in the season, you just know as the season progresses, they're going to start hitting their drive and they're going to get going. I think Maryland could be a very good sleeper team as well. But the Big Ten is just loaded across the board, dude. And it's going to be some exciting basketball to watch this season.
Yeah, there's no question. It's going to be, I don't know if it'll be the toughest league, but we'll get to that later because I think there's another league that's secretly, low-key, very deep that we're not talking about at all. But we'll get to that.
Oh, we probably will be talking about them because we're going to talk about all the Power 5 conferences on this podcast. Wow, did I almost call my podcast a school? I guess you're all learning about basketball right now, so I guess we could say that.
Them on basketball, yes.
From Less is More Sports and the Ball God, if you couldn't see Matt's name.
I don't know why I did that, but I'm having fun with it. So let me have this, people.
No, I'm letting you have it. I'm letting you run with it. You need to have fun. Oh, he's getting it back. Is it coming back on? Oh, no. Oh, it is cap time. It is totally cap time.
I'm going to try to direct this by telling us we're going to do the Big 12 now because yeehaw.
We can go to the Big 12. And I am going to surprise a lot of people on this because, Matt, I know you expected me to be a homer on this podcast. And you're probably right. However, you are wrong about which probably team I am going to be a homer of. And I am going to get it started right out of the gates, kick down the doors of the Old Western with your sheriff hat on, and say that the Texas Longhorns are going to win the Big 12 this season.
I knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. And so I picked your mortal enemy, and it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Well, that's fine. You know, Kansas is going to be a very good team, absolutely. But I'll get into Kansas here in a minute. But obviously, as I said, I'm picking Texas to win the Big 12. And much like our football counterparts, we have a new coach in Chris Beard, who had a lot of success at Texas Tech, turned them into a very competitive team, even took them to a national championship game a couple years back. He's bringing the patented no middle defense to Austin, and I'm all for it. But one of the big reasons that I am so high on the Longhorns, Matt, is not necessarily what they did in recruiting, because they only landed one recruit, but what they did in the transfer portal. They brought in 6 transfers. Yes, 6, Matt. And none bigger than a guy that you probably know all too well because he used to play in the Big Ten, and that is former Minnesota guard Marcus Carr, who will be running our point this year. And he is a fantastic player, and I'm excited to see him suit up for the Longhorns. Also, we have key returners, including Courtney Ramey and Andrew Jones. But I'm excited for this Texas team. You know, even some of the other transfer, Timmy Allen from Utah, I think I really like a lot. And of course, we have depth at the big man position, and we have all kinds of guards. I mean, I alluded to Carr, you know, Ramey, Jones, Big Blue Nation. You're gonna love this one. We got Devin Askew coming in. Oh, this is gonna be one of many Wildcat days. Devin Askew, yes, committed, is now transferring to the Horns. So I think this Horns team is fresh with new talent that has experience, and they have a very good coach that can teach them how to play real defense. So I am very excited. But obviously, Kansas is nothing to shake a stick at, Matt. They at one point won the Big 12 title for 14 consecutive years, and of the 24 seasons they've been in the Big 12, they won it 19 of them. So you can never leave them out. And any coach coached by Bill Self we know can play. But anyways, Bill Self is one of the best coaches in college basketball, and with the returners of Ochai Agbaji, I'm sorry if I butchered that. Dave, do what?
Ochai Agbaji.
Ochai Agbaji. I like it. David McCormick and Christian Braun, they have the chemistry, but one of their biggest offseason moves that I really like, and I watched this kid play in high school for Sierra Canyon because he was playing next to a former Dookie in Marvin Bagley, is the transfer of Arizona State point guard Remy Martin, who's been consistently one of my favorite point guards in college basketball. So,
and a guy who happens to be my Big 12 Player of the Year.
You got Remy Martin. Ooh, you got Remy Martin as your Player of the Year. I like it. I respect it.
I did. I went with it. Unless the only reason why I did not pick Texas in this slot is because, ironically, of something that I love that other teams are doing, which is transfers. It's like you said, there are 6 transfers and a new coach. That may take some evening out. So I'm leaning Kansas right now because when you've got Ochai Agbaji, McCormick, and Braun coming back, you can add in a Remy Martin and things will relatively be the same, if not better. Coach is still Bill Self. They know what to expect. They've got guys who just went nuts last year and just played out of their minds. So that's why I go. That's why I'm leaning Kansas. Is there's a little bit more consistency, but I think that Texas and Kansas are far and away the 2 best teams in that conference. In fact, I looked at the Big 12 and I was kind of shocked that, like, I know Baylor's number 8 in the country, but I don't really know anything about them. I know that, like, a lot of those key pieces are gone, and they also reloaded with transfers. So I don't know how much losing Davion Mitchell is going to hurt Baylor and how much that championship hangover is going to hurt Baylor, but I lean Kansas and Texas to be head and shoulders above everybody else, and I just think that Kansas has a teeny bit more carryover, camaraderie, playing together in that spirit that'll actually help them be slightly better, just slightly, and the Fog Allen advantage too. And because Kansas sold their football program to be very good at basketball, so that's the only reasons why, is because of Black Magic and a little bit of consistency. So that's why I picked Kansas overall. I really like Remy Martin. I had the joy of watching him a couple times when he played for Arizona State. I think he will just turn this Kansas offense into a work of art, really, with the pieces around him, especially Agbaji. I have no doubt that they're going to be. I really think Kansas may be a Final Four caliber team this year, which is weird because they're under the radar. But I really like Kansas. They have consistency. That's the only reason why I would pick them over Texas, though. Texas is going to definitely make some noise, but when there's that much uncertainty, used loosely, more like figuring each other out. It's like they're on their first date with Chris Beard and this program and this team. They're on their first date right now. They need some time to go on another date, and eventually they'll go steady. And who knows, they may make the championship run. But just right now, that's why I'm picking Kansas.
No, I got to respect it. I mean, obviously, it's never a bad pick at all. I mean, like I alluded to earlier, they won 14 consecutive Big 12 titles at one point, and 19 of 20 out of 24 possible. And it's funny that you oh gosh, why did I just have a mind fart right here? But it's funny that you okay, don't know. I hadn't lost my train of thought. But anyways, no, it's funny that you had Remy Martin winning the Player of the Year in the Big 12, because I also have a Kansas Jayhawk winning the Player of the Year, except it is Abaji. I have Abaji winning the Big 12 Player of the Year. Look, when his freshman season, I watched him play against Duke. The year we had Vernon Carey and Cassius Stanley, and of course Trey Jones won ACC Player of the Year that year. So, and I was really impressed. The kid's like a very good talent, and I think he could take the next step this season. But no, with Texas, I feel like one thing we've been missing is that in the Shaka Smart era, I think the hype of going to a big program caused him to lose his way. And what I mean by that is he kind of went away from the coaching style that made him so good at Virginia Commonwealth and tried to accommodate to coaching at a big program. He went away from the pressure defense and that scrappiness that they played with at VCU. And he kind of just wanted to go for like the big time home run recruits and he got some good ones like Mo Bamba and et cetera. But I think with Beard, he's coaching at a Power 5 conference. He's teaching decent level recruits how to play defense. I think he can do the same thing, especially to a bunch of guys that transfers that have experience in college basketball that actually want to win. And I think that's why a lot of these transfers wanted to come to Texas, because they had success at the other schools they were at, but they weren't winning at the way they wanted to. So they come to a big time program with the expectation to win. And of course, I cannot say enough how much I love Marcus Carr. I think he's going to be the newcomer of the year. And yeah, I think he's going to be the newcomer of the year in the Big 12. And as for Baylor, I know what you said. I like you said, they're the preseason number 8 team in the country, but I think a lot of that is because the committee doesn't want to rank them too low coming off of a national championship. Because I think the losses of Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler are going to be too much. Look, Davion Mitchell has one of the coolest nicknames I've ever heard in basketball, and that is off day. Because when he guards you, you're going to have an off day. And I think when you lose to a backcourt like that, that's going to be too much to overcome. Yes, I know they hit the transfer portal, but none of these guys really stand out to me. So I don't have a lot of expectations for the Bears. I think it's a Scott Drew coach team, so I think they'll be okay. I don't think they'll be bad by any stretch, but if we're talking about competing for the Big 12, you're absolutely right. It is Texas and Kansas all the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I can't even really think is the sad part of anybody else. You know, usually last year we had Cade Cunningham proving to be like the man of mystery, and Oklahoma State turned out to be very good. Oklahoma last year with Lon Kruger was surprisingly good. This year, I just don't see that kind of potential. I know there's going to be more than like 2 Big 12 teams in, but I just don't see anybody who's like popping out at me like, ooh, pick me, pick me, pick me. Which is weird because there's a lot of really good programs in there. I mean, Iowa State as of late, Jamie Dixon is still down there at TCU trying his damnedest to make something happen. It's just incredibly hard to tell because there's just no other team that has that thing, that moxie that the two heavyweights do. There are no upstarts this year who I think are going to try to punch the big guy because the big guy is just too damn strong. And I mean, Kansas State's still kind of in a free fall. So I think of all the leagues we're going to talk about today, that is definitely the most two-horse race feeling to me, because it's just like 2 thoroughbreds and then you got a bunch of ponies almost, which is, like I said, I hate to discredit a defending national champion like that, and I'm not trying to. It's just I need to see them play to see what they got in the tank.
No, I think it's absolutely fair. But that about wraps up what I have for the Big 12, unless you want to add anything else.
No, that's all I got too.
All right, what conference are we going to next, Matt? Let's spin the dial.
The Pac-12.
The Pac-12, perfect, because I have really not a lot to say about the Pac-12 because I think, as you alluded to,
Conference of Champions.
The Conference of Champions. I like it.
This one's going out to Bill Walton wherever he is tonight. We love you, Bill.
Matt's headgear is like A quality right now. I'm not gonna lie.
I may leave this on the rest of the show.
Hey, fair enough. Hey, do it. Do you, fam? But anyways, I think the Pac-12 is a one-horse race. As you said, the Big 12 is a two-horse race. I think the Pac-12 is a one-horse race. I think this is UCLA's to lose. They returned pretty much everyone from a Final Four run a year ago. Nothing really else to say. I absolutely love their guard, Tiger Campbell. Look, any type of championship level team, you need a guy like Tiger Campbell on your team. He is a guy who just brings the energy and intensity and is the glue guy for the rest of the roster. We all talk about the scoring ability of Johnny Juzang, and rightfully so. And they also landed a top recruit in Peyton Watson, who we also watched during the FIBA under-19 teams, who can absolutely play. He's a great athlete, can play some real defense. I think the Pac-12's is UCLA's to lose, and I actually think they are a Final Four favorite this year. And just to go ahead and wrap up my thoughts of the Pac-12 before you get into yours, I have Johnny Juzang winning the Player of the Year in the Pac-12, and I have Newcomer of the Year as for Stanford forward Harrison Ingram, because I think he's going to be an opportunity where he's going to have to put up a lot of points.
Les, I really do love you, but you're wrong. You're very, very wrong about the Pac-12, because I'm going to tell you why. There's a team. How many teams from the Pac-12 made the Elite Eight last year?
Quite a few.
And who was one of those teams? Because
Oregon.
My beloved Pacers drafted one of their players. Oregon, that's right. And why aren't we talking about Oregon?
I'm not impressed. I'm just not overly impressed. I think the loss of Duarte, and of course you can make, another Pac-12 team that made an Elite Eight run, USC, I feel like they lost Mobley. I'm just not convinced. So to me, it's like UCLA just looks head and shoulders above everybody else.
Let me try to tuck you out of that. I do agree UCLA is good. And I picked Tiger Campbell for my Player of the Year. Oregon returns Will Richardson, who was their leading scorer on a team that made it to, I think, the Elite Eight. My mind is foggy right now. This thing is cutting off circulation, but it looks great, and I'm not taking it off. So Will Richardson, their leading scorer, is back. Then they went out and got Jacob Young from Rutgers. They got Quincy Guernier from Syracuse and Devon Harmon. And those three guys in three major conferences average 10 points a game. They're not slouches when it comes to scoring. So there's at least four guys on that Oregon team who can score the ball. And Dana Altman always exceeds expectations. Dana Altman seemingly comes out of nowhere every year. He's the Jim Boeheim of the West when it comes to coming out of nowhere and just having impressive performances. And I really like Oregon. I think one of the things UCLA is going to encounter is expectations, the expectational monster of being everyone's favorite to not only win the Pac-12, but maybe even the whole damn thing, like you said, because they've returned everybody. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, because I think that a team like Oregon, when you add three guys, not one, not two, but three guys who can score 10-plus points a night and scored it in the Big Ten, the ACC, and I think the other guy is from the Big 12, I think that's going to be interesting when you combine that with your leading scorer and a coach like Dana Altman, who's been in Oregon for a while, who's got a pretty decent track record. I really thought he could be Indiana's next coach, and I would have been overjoyed. I think Oregon has as good of a shot as UCLA does, but UCLA is going to be right there at the end, no doubt. And the other team I'm interested in is Arizona, because it seems like they're kind of back, kind of not. They've got that what's his name? They got that point guard. Oh, this is embarrassing because I can't remember his name right now. But they got that point guard, and I know they've got the NCAA allegations hanging over their head, but Arizona doesn't have a tendency to stay down for long. They're not going to be a factor in this race, but they'll be an upset pick. Like you said, Stanford, they've got the Harrison kid. He's going to be fine, but I really like Oregon. I don't know why. I just like what Dana Altman does. I like his style, and I like what he's done to revamp his team. So UCLA is the trendy pick. I can easily see that happening, but I'm leaning Oregon just because they got guys who are playing like last chance U level. Like I transferred out. I need to score 10 points here, and they've got a good coach. So I'm going to lean Oregon. But there's going to be it's going to be Oregon and UCLA all the way for me. I can't see anybody else challenging that hard.
I like it. We're back-to-back conferences where we have different picks, so we'll see which one pans out at the end of the season. But yes, spin the dial. Which conference are we going to now? We've been through 3. We got 2 left. We got the SEC and the ACC.
And we are headed to the stop. We already did that one. I literally put this on an app, and now it's just spinning, and I'm trying to get the freaking stop. ACC.
ACC. Oh, are you sure you're ready for that?
I'm ready for that because I'm actually going to surprise you, I think, because I actually did do something I'm kicking myself for doing, but we'll talk about it. Let's go to the ACC.
All right, so we all know who I'm going to talk about in the ACC, as I rock the Duke hat and the Zion Williamson McDonald's All-American jersey. However, I'm going to start off and go with one of the other 4 teams that I think has a possibility to win the ACC. I'm going to start with Florida State because they're the typical Florida State team under Leonard Hamilton. They're long, they're deep, their shortest player is 6'4". You know what they can do. They're going to wreak havoc on defense. They're going to get out and run. The big thing with this team is, are they going to be able to shoot the ball? If they can, watch out. Yes. Another team that obviously you can never count out, regardless of what they've done in the offseason, is Virginia. Look, they have almost dominated the conference over the last 10 years, and I don't expect this to be any differently. Tony Bennett is one of the best coaches in college basketball, and that pack line defense is still suffocating to this day. Despite playing the most boring offense you will ever see in your life, you can never count out the Virginia Cavaliers. And, of course, this is going to be my surprise team in my four, but I think they just have a lot of versatility, and that is North Carolina. I think with another year with Caleb Love, another year with Armando Bacot, I'm very interested to see how the Hubert Davis era pans out. But I think UNC's got, there's just a lot of uncertainties. But I think with their versatility, they could make a run at the ACC crown this year. However, that's not the team that I do think is going to win. We all know what team I am gonna pick. We all know it. And I have waited all podcasts because this is where I get to talk about my Duke Blue Devils for the next foreseeable future. But I'm going to be completely honest before I get into them. 60% of my Duke predicted success strictly comes from the fact that Mike Krzyzewski is retiring at the end of the year. I think the team is going to rally around him, and they're going to want to send him off in style. But that's not the only reason. This team has a lot of talent, and I might shock the world for what I'm about to tell you now. Since Duke started recruiting one and done players, this is the most excited team I can remember preseason. I know what you all are going to say. You weren't excited about the Zion and RJ and Cam Reddish team. I absolutely was. I was excited about them. I knew they were going to be fun to watch. I knew they were going to win a lot of games. But they lacked depth, and they lacked a lot of shooting. This is the most excited I've been about a Duke team in the one-and-done era since the team that actually won the national title in 2015. That when we got the combo pick of Jahlil Okafor and Tyus Jones, and then shortly added Justice Winslow after that, and we already had Grayson Allen, everyone's favorite tripping hazard, before that. But anyways,
the human tripping hazard, even
the human tripping hazard. But look, I absolutely love what Duke did in the offseason. Of course, we're all going to talk about that freshman sensation that is Paulo Banchero. I mean, in a close scrimmage against Villanova. Wow, we got way ahead of myself.
Don't get that far ahead.
Right. He scored 29 points and grabbed 12 boards. Already off to a great start in his Duke career. Other freshmen include the athletic guy the athletic wing that can also shoot in AJ Griffin. We have Trevor Keels, who will probably have the coolest name in college basketball this year in Keel mode. And of course, not to be slept on, but our point guard, our 4-star point guard prospect, and Jalen Blakes. Transfers, of course. Here's the thing, Matt. Can you imagine a player that is the all-time leading shot blocker at a program and will be coming off the bench? That is Theo John this year for the Duke Blue Devils. And of course, our other transfer, this one is very popular in the Duke community because of who his brother is, and that is Bates Jones, the brother of Giants quarterback Daniel Jones.
He's Johnny Dimes.
Johnny
Dimes.
Johnny Dimes.
Doesn't sound as good, but
Beatty Dimes, Johnny Dimes, I don't know. But
Dookie Dimes.
Dookie
no, that sounds bad. That sounds bad. Why
sounds
did I say it? That sounds like a bad punk band. Who are you?
Do you need to take a bathroom break, Matt?
No, I'm fine. Hide your Green Day albums.
But why I'm so high on this team is that this team not only has the loaded freshman talent, they have plenty of returners as well, and they have plenty of depth. Among those returners, one guy that, as anyone who watches this podcast knows, that in the past I have had a very love-hate relationship with, and that is Wendell Moore. Wendell Moore is a hard-nosed player who will give you 110% every time he's on the court, but has a tendency in the past to have made some of the most bonehead decisions that you will ever see. But I've watched him in a lot of the scrimmages this year, watching him in the workouts, and he has really reinvented himself as a player. He's added shooting to his repertoire. Not just shooting, Matt, but shooting off the dribble, creating his own shot.
Which is impressive.
Which is extremely impressive. And I knew he was a good athlete, but he has gotten an even better conditioning, and he's become even a better athlete. I saw a clip of him in a closed practice where he's catching a ball off the rim, cocking it back, and then dunking on, I believe, sorry, Dookie Dimes, but it was Bates Jones, I believe he put on a poster. But I expect Wendell Moore to have a really good season this year. And of course, we all know that Mark Williams can do in the middle. And if you don't know, ask Louisville fans.
Yes. You poor Louisville fans.
And of course, I think one of the biggest X factor on this team is going to be the guy that can stretch the floor, and that is Joey Baker. He's going into his senior year. He needs to go out with a bang. But this Duke team should be a very good defensive team. Believe 1 through 5 can all defend the ball really well. Boncaro is absolutely special. Moore making drastic improvements. The question is just, can they shoot consistently? I think with Keels, Moore's improvement as a shooter, and Joey Baker, I think it definitely is a very strong possibility. My surprise pick is that I predict Wendell Moore to win ACC Player of the Year.
I don't think that's a bad pick at all. No, not at all.
It's just surprising because of who is that his teammate is projected to win ACC Player of the Year in Boncaro. I love Boncaro, don't get me wrong. Boncaro's special.
Yeah.
He's special.
But he's still a rookie. Or a rookie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's a rookie.
Freshman, yeah.
A rookie.
He's a college basketball rookie, absolutely.
He's going to be going to parties and doing stuff like that. You know, he won't have time to focus. I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to surprise you because I actually picked Duke as well.
Because that's 2. I'm savoring it.
Are you ready for the dumbest reasoning why you've ever said?
Why?
I've ever probably said for picking a team. I like Butler, the Butler Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. They're a nice school. They sent me a lot of money as a scholarship. I still couldn't afford them. They're a nice place. I like Butler. I like their coach. I liked them in 2010. I watch Butler basketball when Indiana isn't playing. And I remember one game specifically. I was up and I was watching, and they were playing Marquette. And there was this giant 6'9" guy who was just down low blocking and stopping anything that got in his way. And you know who that was. That was Theo Jones. And I'm thinking about, like you said, that guy is coming off the bench at Duke. That dude is I think he's the conference defensive player of the year because I ended up watching a lot of Big East basketball. I think he's that damn good, and he's coming off the bench. And that's what sold me. I was thinking about this through my head, rationalizing, trying to come up with any team I thought could just make you angry that I didn't go with Duke. but I just can't do it. When you have that good of a defensive player who's your sixth man, and you've got Wendell Moore, you've got all these guys, it's hard to pick against a team like that. Because, frankly, I look at the ACC, and I know Clemson made the tournament last year. They don't really impress me. Louisville's got Malik Williams, yeah, but they lost a lot of guys to the transfer market, and they did bring some in. They still got Malik Williams, but Louisville has the sword of Damocles that is the NCAA always lingering over their head. Florida State is good, but like you said, I don't know if they can shoot. Leonard Hamilton's teams always come out hard-nosed and able to dunk, lay up, and hit bunny shots on you as easily as they can. But I got to see how they play with the long ball. And I look at Duke, and like you said, they've got guys coming off the bench who look like the second coming of Dikembe Mutombo when I was watching him play Butler. So I can't pick against Duke in good conscience, and it pains me to say it because I know everyone in this area of the country is supposed to hate Duke, but they're just good. I can't say it any other way. They're just really that good, and it'll be interesting to see if they live up to that expectation and if they can balance those egos. But there's so much good storyline with Duke this year because this is Mike Krzyzewski's farewell tour. This is the end. And they're going to want to play like they're playing to give him the ultimate parting gift. They don't want to have the "you thought you was Kobe" moment. They want to actually give this guy what he deserves. And what he deserves is, at least an ACC title. And I think Duke will deliver that to him. I actually did pick Paolo as my ACC preseason player of the year because I am a creature of habit. And I really do think that kid's going to be a transformational player at that program. So I got to pick Duke. And that's really my thoughts on the ACC. You hit them all pretty well. So I'm going with Duke.
I'm so happy, and I think Bean's even happier to hear you agree with me on how good my Blue Devils are going to be this year. But I got to bring us back down to earth as well. I mean, I talked about Joey Baker being a big X-Factor player, but a player that's going to play a very pivotal role in how good Duke's going to be is Jeremy Roach. He's our returning point guard. In a lot of ways, he played not to where he was comfortable last year because he played a lot off the ball with guys like Wendell Moore and Jalen Johnson bringing the ball up the court last year. But he was forced to play off the ball, and that's something he wasn't accustomed to doing at John Paul. And and I think that took some getting used to. I think he's going to have the ball in his hands a little bit more this year than maybe in the past, or in the past as in last season. But I expect him still to play off the ball a lot because we're going to run the sets where Wendell Moore or even Trevor Keels brings the ball up the court this year. And what's going to be really scary, Matt, is that we have the bodies to be able to run a small ball lineup with Paolo Banchero at the 5. And as much as I like Mark Williams, as much as you and I are both big on Theo John, when you have Paolo at the 5, being able to spread the 4 like that's going to cause a lot of mismatch problems. And I think and when you see that lineup, that's when Duke's going to send a message that they're putting their depth squad in.
Yes.
They're going for the kill. And
that lineup is just so athletic. You can't guard it.
Yeah. Can you imagine a center just having to step out and guard Paolo on the perimeter? It's not going to happen.
It would just be too intense. Yeah.
Because if you give him space, he can shoot. He can pull up off the dribble and shoot as well. And if you play too close, he can hit you with a little jab step. And the next thing you know, he's dunking on you at the rim. Paolo, it's weird to say because Duke has had so many talented freshmen over the past 10 years. Paolo could be in that same conversation. And it's weird. It's weird to say because you have the Zion Williamsons, you have the Jason Tatums, even, Marvin Bagley, or I can go on and on. But Paolo, what separates Paolo for me is just how much more focused he seems. When I look at it, I follow him on Twitter a lot. I hear a lot of what he says, and he just has a knack for he's, I know you made the joke earlier about he'll be partying. I don't think he will be. I think he's a gym rat, dude. I think he's going to be working his butt off all season. I think he's going to have a fantastic season. I just picked Wendell Moore off experience, but Paolo, let's not get that twisted. Paolo, I am 100% sold, is going to be the guy. He's going to be the man. He's going to be the fan favorite and the guy that everyone thinks is going to be the best player on the team. And I 100% respect that.
I get that.
But I cannot talk enough about my Blue Devils, man. I'm very excited for the season, and I cannot wait for our opening regular season matchup against Kentucky, because I think the Wildcats have another thing coming to them.
Well, speaking of Kentucky, let's move to the last conference we've got on.
Hold on. We are locally based, so we got to talk a little bit about the Cardinals. So, but like you alluded to, the big question mark for them coming out this season is, can they get out from the distraction of the NCAA allegations? Look, they have all the pieces to compete. They did lose a lot, but of course, the number one question again is, can Malik Williams stay healthy? They have the 17th ranked recruiting class coming in. It's third in the ACC. I know L. Ellis is a player that's a lot talked about. But I think another thing is they brought in 2 transfers in shooter Matt Cross and Noah Locke. I think those guys could have quite an impact at Louisville. But, of course, we're going to know a lot about this Louisville team in the first 6 games when Chris Mack sits out.
Yeah, that's going to be really telling. And like you said, I think the key to Louisville having that kind of success is how healthy is Malik Williams.
Absolutely.
If he's healthy, that guy he's a big enough force to turn the tide of a game. If he's not, then you have a giant gaping hole that the guys we've talked about are just going to run down and put layups in over and over. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Louisville reacts to having their coach suspended, to having all this noise in the offseason, and what's coming probably next year when the NCAA decides that they're finally going to drop the hammer that they've been just stupidly rolling things into a bigger and bigger snowball to try and push Louisville off the mountain. I don't really understand the reasoning behind that. Why make the kids suffer? But, far be it from me. I'm not the NCAA, but it just seems like there's a lot of distractions around Louisville, but they'll still be competitive. There's no question. Louisville should be a tournament team. I have no doubt about that. I just don't think they're going to have what it takes to win the conference. So that's my take on Louisville. If Malik Williams is healthy, I think he's going to play out of his mind. I think he could be in that conference player of the year discussion. But there's just so much distraction, so much noise around Louisville that it's hard for me to pick them in a consistent manner like that.
I think it's very fair to say, but only time will tell. But like you were ready to do, I think it is time to move on to the last Power 5 conference. And of course, the Big Blue Nation faithful is going to be saying that they saved the best for last. So let's go ahead and get into put on a Pacers hat.
I just put on a ball cap. It seems SEC-ish.
Fair enough. Anyways, now you just need a beer and you're good.
I know. I had a Mountain Dew earlier. That should count.
That should count, especially that's definitely a down south soda of choice. But anyways,
Yeehaw.
All right. But anyways, let's get into those Wildcats. And of course, they're going to look like every prototypical John Calipari team. They have the number, even though they haven't been recruiting as dominant as they have at the beginning of the Cal era. They still have the number 10 recruiting class in the nation, led by Ty Washington, Damian Collins, and Bryce Hopkins, who all look like very good players. But I think what the difference is, even though they're not getting as dominant of a recruiting class, they're hitting the transfer portal even harder. And of course, They landed 4 transfers and none bigger, which is very ironic to say because he's 5'8", than Georgia guard Severe Wheeler. I mean, don't let the size fool you. The kid can play. And of course, I think a very underrated transfer that they landed was the shooter out of Iowa, and that's CJ Frederick. But everyone's high on Wheeler. Of course, they have Davion Mintz, Keon Brooks, and Jacob Toppin all returning. The Wildcats are talented. We know this. It's every John Calipari team. We know they can play defense. They're going to be athletic. They're going to be talented. But they are not my pick to win the SEC.
And I got to hear what yours is. I want. Did we do this again? Really?
Are we about to agree again?
I don't know. It depends on who you go with.
All right. So my preseason pick to win the SEC is Alabama.
Yeah, we did it.
We agreed again? Bro, 60%. That is a record. Somebody mark this down. Hold on. I'm taking a mental note of this.
The one time we agreed on things.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm savoring this moment forever. My favorite sport to talk about. Me and Matt agreed on 3 of the 5 conferences. I'm loving it. But yes, getting into Alabama. I absolutely love the job that Nate Oates has done, and he's really modernizing the Tide to fit the modern age of basketball. Recruiting class, they have the number 14 recruiting class coming in, but it's good, doesn't blow your head out of the water, but they bring in a stud point guard by the name of J.D. Davidson. Matt, we may not know a lot about basketball, but I feel like there's this point guard playing for the Grizzlies that's pretty good by the name of John Morant.
Who?
Yeah, John Morant sounds familiar. He had some kind of play with Kevin Love or something like that, or he's in some commercial now. I don't know.
Was he like on what state was he on? Was he on Morehead State?
I think it was that other Kentucky team. I think it was Murray State. I think Murray State might be the more accurate.
Sure, it wasn't Transylvania.
I don't know. I'm kind of blanking on it.
Could have been Transylvania.
I think Murray State sounds right.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something. It was a flash in the pan anyway.
But all jokes aside, yes, John Morant out of Murray State. J.D. Davidson draws pro comparisons to John Morant, if that tells you anything about how this kid plays. And what actually solidified this for me is that they landed, in my opinion, the best incoming transfer in the SEC in Nimari Burnett, who I watched Nimari Burnett play in high school when he played for Prolific Prep next to Jalen Green, and the kid can absolutely do it all. So,
yep.
And of course, they returned Jaden Shackelford and Javon Quinterly. Shout out to the Jelly fam if you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I think they're poised to make another Elite S to even more run. So I'm really high on the Tide.
I am too. Jaden Shackelford is my player of the year. In addition to those other guys, they also added Noah Gurley from Furman University, who's a great shooter. They're a very deep team that proved a lot of people wrong last year just by playing the style of Nate Oates is having them do, which is so modern and yet so throwback basketball with as hard-nosed as it can be, because those guys don't stop. They don't quit. They hustle on every play. Jaden Shackelford, like I said, he's my player of the year. They've got Quinterly. They've got so many pieces they can just throw at you at once. But I don't think it's going to be easy for them, because I actually think the SEC is the second deepest conference, and there's no competition. Because in addition, like we said, we've got Kentucky, who a lot of people are picking. Tennessee is always dangerous. Mississippi State, they got a lot of transfers. They got a pretty good roster. Then you go down to Auburn, a team that was ineligible for the tournament last year. They went out and got Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler, who are two. Well, Jabari Smith was a recruit. Kessler came from North Carolina. There are a lot of North Carolina guys in the SEC now, but they've got those guys. Even a team like Vanderbilt has Scottie Pippen Jr., who's an up-and-coming guy who can change the outcome of your game in its own right just by hustling and playing his style of game. So, and we're not even talking about another team from the SEC that shocked a lot of people in Arkansas. Arkansas is still around, too. We can't forget about them and their giant 7'4" guy in the middle. I mean, the SEC is a deep conference. It's a little top-heavy, but those top 5 teams are very, very good. Because not only, like I said, if you go Alabama, Kentucky, Auburn, Tennessee, and let's say Arkansas, that's a tough gambit. That's a tough spread of competition. And I mean, yeah, Georgia, they're not going to be much this year. Tom Crean is probably going to get fired at the end of the year, I think. But there are a lot of good players hiding in the SEC, and I think it's the second best conference overall compared to the Big Ten in college basketball. But I'm still rolling with Alabama just because they have the momentum, they have Nate Oates, and they have Jaden Shackelford. And those 3 things are a pretty hard trinity to beat. And I can't think of many teams that do. No offense to the Cats. They're going to be in the tournament. But that Alabama team just is going to grind. They are going to grind you, and then they're going to outshoot you. And that's a deadly combo, a very deadly combo.
100%. And the Wildcats may be able to match them in size, but the Tide can just spread them out. And like you said, just grind you out on the perimeter. But no, I like you alluded to, patience is virtue, my friend, because I was going to get into the Arkansas Razorbacks because I love the job that Eric Musselman is doing down in Fayetteville. What's not to like about him, though? Long, athletic, deep, can shoot, have a 7'4" guy in the middle. I think they're feeding off the momentum that they just landed 2 5-stars coming in, not this coming season, but the season after. Eric Musselman's got something brewing in Fayetteville, and I think it's exciting for fans. But also, Tennessee, we know they're going to be good. As a guy that I know as a Texas fan all too well, Rick Barnes is a very good coach. He's just not a coach that can usually take that next step and win a championship, but a good coach nonetheless. They went out and got a very good point guard in the recruiting cycle with Kennedy Chandler, who draws comparisons to Kyrie Irving, a guy that I saw play in college a few times that it was kind of cut short a little bit, but definitely impressed when he played. I think only played 11 games, but still got drafted number 1 overall, and now he's nowhere to be seen. So we'll something about
come
that.
Home.
Yes, come home, Kyrie, come home. But anyways, another underrated move that the Vols made this year is that they hit the transfer portal, and they landed a guy that I covered in high school in Justin Powell. And shout out to a good friend of mine, Matt Spencer, who actually coached him at North Oldham. But anyways, Justin Powell can play. And I watched Justin Powell in the King of the Bluegrass tournament, and according to Spencer, he was only about 75% in that tournament and still was above and beyond the best player in that tournament. And that is saying a lot, given the fact that would go on to win Mr. Basketball in the state of Kentucky, Davion Mcknight. I don't know why I just butchered his name. I have the kid's number on my phone. I don't know how I just butchered that.
You were thinking of Davion Mitchell.
No way, because I talked to Davion almost every day for 2 years. I don't know why I just butchered his name, but yes, Davion Mcknight, who is now playing at Western Kentucky and will be starting next to another very good prospect, but we'll get into that here in a minute. But yeah, Davion Mcknight was also in that tournament, and Louisville commit Caleb Glenn was also in that tournament as well. And Justin Powell still looked to be head and shoulders above the rest of the competition. Now to be fair, Caleb Glenn was only a freshman, so that's a very unfair accusation to make. I mean, but anyways, Justin Powell can play, and that's all there really is to it. So I like the moves that the Vols made in the offseason. I was very surprised that Walker Kessler did not go to Tennessee, and I'm going to tell you why. Justin Powell and Walker Kessler are very good friends. Justin Powell left Auburn because, like Louisville, Auburn is also in trouble with the NCAA right now, and they are on the verge of getting a postseason ban and some other consequences that may come out. So I was very surprised to see the Tigers land Jabari Smith and that for Walker Kessler to sign with Auburn, knowing why his good friend Justin Powell left. So, I 100% agree that the SEC.
You can never count Bruce Pearl out.
Do what?
You can never count Bruce Pearl out. The guy always seems to sneak in when you least expect him.
Absolutely. But I think that wraps up, the Power 5 conference, Matt. But now it's time to get into the teams that are outside of the Power 5 that are really good. And how we're going to do this real quick is I'm going to give the obvious picks and talk about what makes them good. And Matt is going to go into the sleeper teams. So obviously, the first team we got to talk about is the preseason number 1 team in the country and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. We all know went 29-1 last year with the one loss coming in the national championship game to Baylor. Look, they dominate their conference every year, probably because they play nobody in conference, but they make up for it in their pre-conference schedule. They return the likes of Drew Timme and Andrew Nembhard, who are 2 very quality players. And then recruiting, they brought in the number 1 overall prospect in Chet Holmgren, who I am extremely high on, who is, as much as we throw this term out, Matt, he's a real unicorn. He's just a rare breed that we don't see, like, at all. Hardly ever. I mean, he's 7'3", can move and handle like a guard. He can block shots. He can shoot. Kid can just do it all. He needs to add some weight, but he can do it all. And, of course, a very underrated signing in the recruiting class is Nolan Hickman, who I think is a very quality guard and could obviously, he's got big shoes to fill if he wants to step in for Jalen Suggs, but I don't think he's going to have to necessarily be Jalen Suggs. I think he's just going to have to take care of the ball and make smart decisions, something that he is very capable of doing. So anyways, another one, a team that is getting a lot of buzz, but hasn't proven a damn thing yet, and that is the Memphis Tigers. They bring in the number 1 recruiting class headlined by as we talk about something that is thrown around a little too much, I'm going to talk about another thing that's thrown around a little too much. As they bring in Kevin Durant 2.0 and Imani Bates. Now, look, we call guys like Brandon Ingram and Zaire Williams guys like Kevin Durant or similar play styles to Kevin Durant. And given that Kevin Durant is one of the best scorers in NBA history, we're so quick to want to find that next guy because he's so intriguing. He's a 7-foot guard who can shoot anywhere on the court. I think we have officially found Kevin Durant 2.0 and Imani Bates. I watched him play a lot in high school, and he's the real deal. They also have another blue chip top 5 recruit in Jalen Duren. I'm not as high on him as Bates. Well, I'm not high on a lot of people as I am on Bates, but I'm really not overly high on Jalen Duren. But nonetheless, he's still a quality big man. And of course, the key returner is Lester Quinones, who can make some serious noise on the wing position this year. And I got to say that Penny Hardaway and Juwan Howard have started a trend in college basketball of being those former NBA players or former NBA coaches to transition back to the college level and flip teams almost automatically. So the Memphis Tigers, they're going to be an exciting team to watch, but I'm not as high on them yet as most are. They're going to be fun. I don't think they're going to be as good as everyone expects them to be. I can still see them getting to the Elite Eight, though. Of course, you can never count out another very well-coached team, and that is the Villanova Wildcats, the preseason number 4 team in the country, and they're not getting enough talk. Despite getting that work in that close scrimmage by my Blue Devils, had to throw that in there. But they return the backcourt of Colin Gillespie, who's coming back from a knee injury last year, and Justin Moore. But of course, the big question mark for them is going to be the health of Brian Antoine. If he is healthy, they can make some real noise. But of course, I also think the loss of Jeremiah Robinson Earl is going to be a lot for them to overcome, and I'm interested to see. But they're going to have to play small. But you know what? It's Jay Wright. He does that anyway. So they have no problem playing small. He almost invented the small ball, if we're going to be realistic about it. And of course, I think the last team that's really obvious that's not in a Power 5 conference that can make some serious noise is Houston. We all know about the run they went on in the NCAA tournament, and Calvin Sampson, you know, as long as he's not caught calling any recruits during the dead period, we should be in the clear for this season. But Houston, they play a very scrappy style of defense and a very intense style of play. But of course, my favorite moment from Houston last year is when one of their players is caught on camera looking at somebody, I believe it was his family member, going, "I'm a savage. I do this. I'm a savage." So you know what? If he's a savage, I got to see it for another year. So I think those are the obvious teams outside the Power 5 we got to watch out for. And the big question, can Houston repeat the success from last season? So Matt, enlighten me about the teams that are going to be slept on outside the Power 5.
This is going to be fun because there's a lot of them, because there are a lot of surprisingly good teams out there. Going to start with the St. Louis Billikens. These guys should have made the tournament last year, but they only played about 17 games because of COVID-19. Now that fog is lifting, what you're going to get is a very good team. Their point guard is Yuri Collins. That guy is he's like a smaller Magic Johnson with the way he can create shots. And the best part is they have really good wings. Look for Gibson Jameson to have a big year. The A-10, it's probably going to run through St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure is far and away the best team in the A-10. But if you're playing St. Louis in a bye game, you might want to have your popcorn ready, because St. Louis creates a lot of astounding shots, a lot of great fluid ball movement. They need a big man, but they're going to be really good. They've got wings and shooters coming out the nose.
I'm going to cut you off real quick. You know, I'm going to let you finish, but I do have to ask you, what is it that is so intriguing about this St. Bonaventure team? Because they are ranked inside the top 25. So we got to know what to expect from them.
Well, they were a 9 seed last year, and they brought everybody back. And they added in a couple of low-key but very nice recruits, and basically they're just going to be the same team. And while most teams lost something, St. Bonaventure gained things. And they're in not a weak conference. The conference they're playing in the A-10, it's going to be down a little bit. they're going to be really fine. And if they're going to be an upper level seed, I'm talking like 5 maybe, because of how they're going to play and what their reputation is. They play extremely tough defense. They have extremely good depth. They didn't lose any pieces from a team like I said was a 9 seed and almost beat LSU last year. They're going to be fine. They're going to be a team that you need to watch out for going into March and beyond, because if your team's playing them in the non-conference, they will beat you, because they will beat you to a mush. That's how physical, that's how good St. Bonaventure is, and that's why they're getting the love they deserve.
Okay. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Matt. I just had to know.
Speaking of teams that will grind you off, or that sounded wrong, grind you to a pulp, we're going to the MAC for this one, the Buffalo Bulls. Remember when Nate Oates had that very good squad that beat Arizona in the tournament and we all act shocked? This team, I believe, is just as good as they were. They have a 3-headed monster. They've got Trevion Williams, Josh Mbala, and Ronaldo Segu. Those 3 guys are just absolute torture chambers if you're going down low or on the wing. They're great players. They just simply do not care if you bump or hit them. They're going to bump you back and they're going to score. The MAC really isn't a deep conference this year either. So, I mean, those 3 guys are maybe even risking canceling each other out for Player of the Year in the MAC, but it's going to be one of those guys. Buffalo's team is loaded. They're very good. They have a little bit of a depth issue, but as long as one of those 3 guys is on the floor, you're going to be in big trouble, because those guys will absolutely work you. They're going to give you an off day, and there's 3 of them. It's a 3-headed monster. It's King Ghidorah, and it's in the MAC, and if you see it in March, you're going to want to run the other direction.
I love the Godzilla reference.
Next, we're going to talk about a team that has a new coach, so I'm not as high on them, but they're still very good. And you're going to love the name of the guy who leads this team. Justin Bean is the leader of the Utah State Aggies. Utah State was a very good team last year, another one of those teams that could have made the NCAA tournament. Justin Bean is back, and they have a new coach named Ryan Odom. And that name doesn't really sound like a sexy pick, but let me tell you what Ryan Odom did before he came to the Aggies. He was at a little school called UMBC. And I don't know if you know this, but UMBC did beat a Virginia team once in some tournament. I can't remember if it was important or not. But Ryan Odom did engineer that upset, and you're giving him one of the best shooters on the outside I've seen in a long time. Utah State is going to be a very tough out for your squad in March or in December. And speaking of non-conference upsets, remember last year, Les, when we were watching in kind of shock as UK fell to the Richmond Spiders at home? Well, the Richmond Spiders didn't make the tournament last year because of a huge injury to Nick Sherrod, who's like the heart and soul of their team. But he's back. He's healthy, and he looks really good. And they have another guy named Jacob Gilliard, who's one of their guards. He's about to lead the NCAA in steals. And I'm not talking about per game, the whole damn NCAA all time. He's 6 steals away from it. He's going to get it. This is a veteran team with a lot of size. They're going to cause a lot of trouble. This Atlantic 10 conference is more loaded than I can describe to you with those top three teams. If you get paired with an Atlantic 10 team in your bracket, it may seem trendy to pick them, but do it. If I had to pick Richmond over a mid-tier Big Ten school, I would, because Jacob Gilliard is just that good defensively. He will find ways to knock the ball away from you. He will steal your cookies, sell them at the bake sale, and then spend the money on something really nice for himself in the time it takes you to run down the court and catch him before he hits the layup.
And the time it takes you to pour a glass of milk.
Yes. He's going to be your Santa Claus in the worst way possible. So the Richmond Spiders, they're going to be really good. Then we're going to go to the Ohio Valley for a team that's going to leave the Ohio Valley in a couple years. But for this year, they're in the Ohio Valley, and I expect them to win it. They got upset last year by Murray State, but Belmont may be the best team in Tennessee, and I am not kidding. 97% of all their points last year from a 26-4 ball club are back. 97%. Thank you, Yahoo Sports, for that. It's a great stat to have. They have a guy named Grayson Murphy, and you need to get to know him now. So that way, when you're not shocked when he ends up on the All-American team at the end of the year. We're talking about a guy who led a 26-4 team. They've got a great center whose name I'm going to butcher, so I'm not even going to say it. But Belmont is going to roll the OVC, and they may roll your favorite team because of a little guy named Grayson Murphy. And now two teams who I think are actually kind of mysteries, but they're going to be really good. And the first one is Colorado State.
Something about guys named Grayson and getting us all to trip up.
Yep. Well, I don't know if this guy trips people, but, Belmont has a great school of music, so he could be learning how to be a music producer. So I'm not going to insult him because I might want him to make my album someday if the NBA doesn't work out. It's going to be all diss tracks dissing you for the way I've been treated on this show. I'm kidding. Anyway.
I'm here for
moving on. This one is a team that I think everyone needs to get to know right now because they are the real deal. And that's Colorado State. The Colorado State Rams, they should have been in the tournament last year, in my opinion. They got too many problems with COVID. This is your dark horse team that if you want to be you were a fan, you need to buy into them now because they're going to be a fairly high seed if they pull out and win their conference. And they were a number one seed in the NIT last year. They should have been in the tournament. And there's one guy who you need to be baptized into the church of now before you get accused of being a bandwagoner in March, and that's David Roddy. The guy's unbelievable. He's got a great outside shot. He hustles every play, 16 points per game last year, and it's only going to go up. This team is going to give your favorite team a headache. David Roddy is the real deal. He has the kind of Ja-ish Morant potential, even though he doesn't play the same position, to revolutionize, Western Athletic Conference or Mountain West basketball. That's how good David Roddy is. And if you want to go on and watch the highlights, go on and watch the highlights. But this guy is insatiable. He will chart. He is like a ram. He has stamina. He will hit you right in the face with his shot. He is amazing. Be baptized into the church of David Roddy now, or forever hold your peace. And finally, for one last team, I have one of the weirdest stories I think I've ever heard in basketball. And we're going to talk about a team from the Horizon League now, the Milwaukee Panthers. Now, this is like, what, man? What are you doing? For those of you who don't know, there's a guy named Patrick Baldwin who chose to go to Milwaukee over Duke, over North Carolina, over so many schools because his father is a coach at Milwaukee, at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. They're the Panthers. He's a lottery pick. Most mock drafts I've seen have got him going in the top 10. He's just stayed close to home. He's on a team that's got their two leading scorers back. They got a transfer from UCF in Moses Bowl, and they added a 3-star freshman towards the end of the recruiting cycle named Kyle Ross. And they're in the Horizon League, and they're not even favored to win. It's Cleveland State who's still favored to win. But Milwaukee seems to me like one of those teams, usually when we get a guy like this, it's like Ja Morant or Steph Curry or insert name here, who comes out of nowhere and proves himself to be a great pro. Usually these teams don't have 5-star top 10 recruits on them. And if this team could sneak in to be a 16 seed, it would be unprecedented in my opinion. Because if you're a beat-up team out of the SEC who got a 1 seed and your reward is playing a lottery pick, anything can happen. Anything can happen. Especially with a guy like Patrick Baldwin IV, who looks really good, his highlights look good, and just chose to stay close to home with his dad instead of going to a big school. So those are my teams that I really like to be upset specials and teams to watch as we approach March. And, you can throw in Vermont too. They're going to be good. There are a lot of good mid-major teams out there who have a lot of really good guys. And those are just a few. But, yeah, it's a great list. It's a deep conference. There's a lot going on.
I think it's a very solid list that you made. And of course, yes, we all know about Patrick Baldwin, which I wish him the best of luck. And obviously, very understandable to want to play for your father. But I would have loved to see him in a Duke uniform this year. But I can't fault him. I can't fault the kid for doing what's best for him. But very solid list, Matt. As I know you can that you do every episode on this podcast, bringing the info and the facts that people are sleeping on. And now we're getting into the wrap up before we get into everyone's favorite portion of the podcast as the top 5. But I am going to run through some season predictions that I have. I have for my player of the year in college basketball this year, I have Drew Timme out of Gonzaga, a returning 20-10 guy on the number 1 team in the preseason number 1 team in the country. I think that's very, very safe pick to bet on. Freshman of the year, I have Amani Bates, who, as I alluded to, Very special player, and he's going to be an opportunity to score a lot of points on a very exciting Tigers team. Defensive player of the year, this might be a homer pick, but I'm going to go with Mark Williams. You know, anytime you are starting over an all-time leading shot blocker in Marquette history, you can play some defense. And being that he's a 7-footer with a 7'7" wingspan and a nose for blocking shots, I think Mark Williams is a pretty safe pick for it. My coach of the year, and you're going to like this one, Matt, because it is a Big Ten team that we agree on, and that is Coach Matt Painter. What I think the job he's going to do with the Boilermakers this year is going to be noticed by the national media, and he will get the nod for Coach of the Year. So moving on to my Final Four. So in my Final Four, I have Duke, UCLA, Gonzaga, and Purdue making the Final Four. In the championship game, I have Duke and UCLA. But closing out the Coach K era, I have the Blue Devils winning the national championship. A surprise to absolutely no one.
Not at all. And for my kind of precursor to our real top five, I'd like to present some dark horse teams in the Power Five, or just outside the Power Five that no one's really talking about, and in the Power Five. My first one is SMU, the Mustangs, because of one guy, and that's Kendrick Davis. He's one of the best point guards in the country, and we all know what a good point guard can do if he gets hot at the right time. So I really like SMU. I like what Tim Jankovic is doing. I like Kendrick Davis. I like SMU if they get hot at the right time to be a factor in the AAC and maybe even in the NCAA tournament. I like Syracuse because Syracuse is just going to get in the tournament. That's all they do. They've got Buddy Boeheim, who's a senior. They've still got Jim. That's all they do is make the tournament. They could go on a run like they always do. Mississippi State, this team knocked Kentucky out of the SEC tournament. They have a great point guard in Iverson Molinar. They've added in Garrett Brooks from UNC, and they've added Rocket Watts from Michigan. That's a lot of tournament experience. That could get you somewhere if they play well enough to make it in. Memphis is actually a team I'm very high on. Imani Bates is good. Jalen Duran is good. The other time they had a team this good, they went to the Final Four. And you throw in Quiones and Alex Lomax at the guard position, sky's the limit, I think, for Memphis, as long as they can stay above the controversy. And finally, because I get to make a homer pick on this one, Indiana. Mike Woodson, welcome to your expectations. You've got Trace Jackson Davis, a preseason All-American, back. The problem with Indiana last year was you had terrible guard play. Also, go out and get Xavier Johnson and Miller Kopp. Tamar Bates, he's on the team too. Throw in the guys you had last year like Rob Fennessy, Race Thompson down low, Christian Lander, and Trey Galloway. You've got some guys who can hustle and shoot and learn even more. And you throw in Michael Durr from South Florida, who's a 7'1" guy in the middle. Indiana has depth, and Indiana, I think, is going to make it to the Sweet 16 in Mike Woodson's first year. That may be the dumbest thing I've ever said on this take, but I like Indiana to even make it to the Elite Eight if possible, because I don't think people realize how deep that team is. There is a lot of depth right there. So those are my dark horse teams from the Power Five and slightly beyond to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament and just ruin your bracket.
Matt, I think it's time to transition to everyone's favorite portion of the podcast, and that is the top five. So for this edition of the top five, I am going to give the top five freshmen that I am looking forward to seeing. Not necessarily will be the best. In a lot of cases, they may be, but not necessarily the best, just the ones that I am looking forward to seeing. And Matt is going to give his top five returning players. So, Matt, who's going first?
Well, diaper dandies always go first, so we're going to go with you.
Sound fair enough? But anyways, I'm going to kick off my top five with a recruit that not a lot of people are talking about outside of the state of Kentucky, and that is local talent Zion Harmon, who will be the backcourt mate to a player that I know all too well, and that is Davion Mcknight. And I'm sorry that I butchered your name earlier. Davion, I love you, and I wish you the best of luck this season. But back to Zion Harmon. He was an absolute bucket at Marshall County and for the Boo Williams AAU circuit. I remember a matchup where Collins scrimmaged Marshall County. Zion had 50. Davion had 45. That's a pretty good point. That's a pretty good point guard battle, if you ask me.
Pretty good.
But I'm looking at two backcourt players whose games just complement each other so well, with Zion being the absolute bucket and a scorer and Davion being able to just do everything else, that I'm excited to see what the Hilltoppers are able to do this year. My number 4 player, I have to go with my Ja Morant 2.0 player and J.D. Davidson. I think you have a Ja Morant 2.0 style of player and a Nate Oat offense that could space the floor. That is a scary combination waiting to happen. What was that?
Sorry, my phone went off.
Oh, you're fine. But anyways, so yes, J.D. Davidson is my number 4 freshman that I'm looking forward to seeing. Number 3 is a player you just alluded to, and that is Patrick Baldwin, a 5-star prospect, and many believe will be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft this year. He plays a lot like Klay Thompson, but he's 6'10". So think about that. I'm interested to see the kind of recognition that a 5-star talent like Patrick Baldwin brings to the Milwaukee program. And I'm excited to see how deep on a tournament run they can go on. Number 2, I'm going to go with Emoni Bates, because a player that I'm very high on, and really these top 2 picks could be 1A and 1B. But Emoni Bates is Kevin Durant 2.0. He can score at all 3 levels, and he can do more than just score. He's going to be a problem for anyone who plays the Memphis Tigers this year, and I'm looking forward to it. And number 1, I got to go with the unicorn himself and Chet Holmgren. Look, he is one of the most talented prospects you'll ever see. He's 7'3", can handle like a guard, but he's going to be more of a shot blocker in his 1 year in college basketball. The question is, can he add weight, and how is he going to play next to Drew Timme? So that is my 5 that I am looking forward to seeing. So Matt, who are, in your opinion, the 5 returners that you are looking forward to seeing this year?
I'm going to start with my honorable mentions because I've got a lot of them, because there are a lot of great guys coming back. Tiger Campbell from UCLA, Remy Martin from Kansas, Johnny Juzang, UCLA, Buddy Boeheim, Syracuse, Jordan Bohannon, Iowa, and E.J. Liddell from Ohio State. Now for the top 5 proper, I have at number 5, because I get a homer pick too, Trace Jackson Davis. And I'm not just saying this as a homer. I'm saying this as a guy who has watched this kid develop for 4 years, who knows what he's capable of down low, who knows he's a rebounding machine and can dunk with the best of them. If he develops a jump shot of any kind under Mike Woodson, he will be an All-American at the end of the year, and he may be the Big Ten Player of the Year at the end of the year, if he plays that well. Number 4 is a guy who I didn't even think was going to be coming back this year, but Kofi Cockburn from Illinois. He is going to be the engine that makes the possible Illini team good or bad. If he plays really well, he's a defensive presence down low that cannot be stopped. He's an immovable force who takes out your unmovable object. He is just a complete package when it comes to just making outlandish defensive plays. I love Kofi Cockburn. Number 3, from a team we actually haven't covered in spite of their Cinderella run last year, Max Abmas from Oral Roberts. This guy put on a shooting clinic, not as good as Steph Curry's, but still pretty damn good, on a miracle run for the Oral Roberts Golden. Are they the Golden Flash or the Golden Eagles or something? But I'm really excited to see what he does now that people know who he is. Is he going to come out and just absolutely dominate? I think he can, and I think he'll be an All-American by the time the season ends. He's not, because I just think he's that good. I really loved watching him play in the tournament. I'm going to try to make a point to watch Oral Roberts basketball at least once during the regular season because of how great of a shooter this guy is. Number 2, my player of the year, Trevion Williams. I just love Trevion Williams. I love his game. I love the way he hustles. I love his defense. I love his leadership. I love everything about Trevion Williams, and I cannot wait to watch him play every team except Indiana, where I hope he has no points and no rebounds.
Wait, is he your player of the year in college basketball or your player of the year in the Big Ten?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And the only reason why I don't think he's going to win player of the year is because of my number 1 guy. You know it's coming, Drew Timme. This is the year of Drew Timme. We fell in love with his mustache, and now we're going to fall in love with his enhanced ball playing. Corey Kispert is gone, but he's got Chet Holmgren running next to him. Drew Timme is a complete package and a very good player, and he's the only reason why Trevion Williams won't win player of the year in the media, because the coverage around this guy and the way he plays is just going to make him stand out. So my number 1 is Drew Timme from Gonzaga when it comes to returning players.
As all, pretty solid top 5 list for the both of us. But obviously for the fans, tell us what players you're looking forward to seeing this coming season, whether they are the freshmen or the returning guys. And tell us what you think in the comment section below. What are some of your predictions for this college basketball season? However, before I forget and before we end the podcast, I do have to say that we have the results of the stand bracket. So, drum roll, please, Matt. At 71%, the athlete with the worst fans in all of sports goes to Conor McGregor.
Whoa! I did not see that coming.
Conor McGregor pulls the upset over Michael Jordan. So Jordan stans cannot claim this.
Oh, man, I did not see that coming. Conor McGregor.
I didn't see a lot of this bracket going this way, but it is.
Conor McGregor will receive an official plaque alerting him that he has won the stand bracket tournament through the mail.
He will probably get this notification and drive to my house and throw a drink at me, but that is beside the point.
He's going to apologize to absolutely no one.
The double champ does what he wants. I just hope it's not a chair. I can handle a drink. I don't know if I can handle him throwing a chair at me.
He's not a wrestler, Les. Come on. It's not like Macho Man Randy Savage is coming to your house.
No, do you not remember him throwing the chair, or was it a dolly at the bus with Khabib?
No, I remember that.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I don't know if he can throw it gracefully like a wrestler. You might be able to dodge it if he just chucks it at you.
I don't know. I don't know. It's Conor McGregor. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not afraid of most people, but I feel like I would not want to fight Conor McGregor. I'm just saying.
Join us next week as we test the validity of the physics of throwing a dolly at Les.
Not anyone else, just specifically me.
Just Les.
Just coming in at 6'3", 230 pounds. How quick can he move to dodge a dolly? Next week on next week's episode of the Less is More Sports podcast.
Mythbusters edition.
Mythbusters edition. But anyways, that is all the time we have for today. But like I said earlier, tell us what you like, what you didn't like, and be sure to like and subscribe to the Less is More Sports podcast channel. And without further ado, Matt and I are out. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. I can't.